Welcome back. Prison institutions all over the world are established to provide rehabilitation and correctional facilities to reintegrate convicted persons back into society. The Nigerian Correctional Service, formerly known as the Prison Service, is expected to take into lawful custody all those duly certified to be so kept by courts of competent jurisdiction. However, the prisons are still characterized by dilapidated facilities, poor welfare of prisoners, congestion, just to mention a few. In this special report, our correspondent Terry Kumi takes a look at the challenge of prison congestion and the new mandate.
Following the signing of the Nigerian Correctional Service Bill into law by President Muhammadu Buhari, there are indications that the issue of overcrowding in prisons would now be addressed by the portion of that law which allows state controllers of prisons to reject prisoners on the basis of their prison capacity. There are also plans to build more maximum prisons for the same purpose of the congestion.
We are going to have such type, by the grace of God, in the 6 geopolitical zones, is to take care of congestion in prisons and to take care of dilapidated structures, old dilapidated structures.
Nigerian prisons have a total male inmate population of 72,506 and 1,489 for female, bringing the total to 73,995, which exceeds the holding capacity of the prisons, which is about 48,000, clearly indicating the overcrowded nature of the prisons. Of the 73,995 inmates currently in prison, 23,568 are convicted prisoners, while 50,427 are awaiting trial. Many prison surveys have shown that some prisoners awaiting trial may not know when they will be tried, and many are held for crimes which, if they had been promptly tried and perhaps convicted, would have served their terms. The UNODC in 2015, after an assessment of 36 Nigerian prisons, made one key recommendation, which was the need to take urgent measures that would help reduce the number of awaiting trial inmates as a way of reducing congestion in Nigerian prisons. This recommendation has been re-echoed repeatedly by the National Human Rights Commission and other human rights groups.
In developed societies, if you are arrested today, next morning, in fact, this very day you are arrested, you'll be taken to court. Unlike us here, we can wait for 3 months or more, 6 months or more before we take somebody to court. That is why you have awaiting trial people.
The new Nigeria Correctional Service law places emphasis on rehabilitation and reintegration, even though the service says it has been carrying out correctional measures for inmates before now.
We established a kind of secondary school in the prison, in Enugu prison. We established like a secondary school and adult education, which is called night school outside. Yes, the purpose is to capture everybody to make sure they're educated.
The Human Rights Commission believes that rehabilitation cannot be complete without integration, which itself cannot be achieved unless the problem of stigmatization is dealt with.
If we are saying we are reforming people in the prison, why do we say an ex-convict should be disqualified from participating in public life, for instance? There's need to create awareness around this and approach the parliament to amend the law to remove all those shackles of stigmatization that have been frustrating prisoners and ex-convicts.
Hopefully, with the new Nigeria Correctional Service Act, ex-convicts will rejoin the society as reformed persons, thus reducing the crime rate in the country. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
Industry players and scholars have been discussing ways to encourage journalism students embrace investigative journalism as a way of holding government accountable and unraveling the truth. They were speaking during an interactive workshop on broadcasting and investigative journalism at the Bayero University in Kano State. Our correspondent Idris Jibrin has this report.
You're all welcome to this event.
Communication scholars, senior journalists, lecturers and students of Bayero University, Kano gathered for an interactive session on encouraging and improving investigative journalism in Nigeria.
For our students and
the Vice Chancellor of Bayero University, Kano, Professor Yahuza Bello, opens the discussions with the words of encouragement to the students.
Ensure that your reporting, your journalism is based on facts, based on investigations, not based on hearsay. Be critical of what you hear, what you see, what you read.
The lead speaker is the chairman of Channels Media Group, Mr. John Momo, and he speaks through the Assistant General Manager Operation of Channels Television, Mr. Kingsley Uranta. His message is clear. An investigative journalist has a daunting task to dig out verifiable facts.
I'd like to encourage the students here to make up their minds that they are going to serve humanity. And sometimes it's a thankless job. But because you know what you're pursuing, and because you know you want to contribute to humanity, you have to do the right thing.
The conversation gets more interactive with the convener of the program, Professor Omaru Pati, the first African to be elected on the World Journalism Education Council, Professor Raf Akimfele, and other panelists sharing their perspectives.
You must be alive to tell the story. You must be alive to investigate. And when we talk of safety, there are 6 or 7 layers of safety for a journalist. There's psychological safety, physical safety, economic safety, gender safety, digital safety, social safety, and probably political safety.
We have agreed that investigative journalism is a process that requires research with constant variables and concomitant variables.
The essence of investigative journalism is to chase, pursue, and report on any one of 3 issues: wrongdoing, abuse of power, corruption.
At the end of the conference, the general consensus is that journalism students need to carefully learn the ropes and embrace the challenge that investigative journalism offers, especially in holding the government accountable to the people. Idris Jubrin, Channels Television News.
Succor has come for indigents of Imo State, especially residents of Owerri, the state capital, as the state government is set to revive moribund water schemes. The project is a collaboration between the state government and the United States Agency for International Development, USAID. According to the State Commissioner for Public Utilities, Mr. Chuma Naji, the new water policy, known as Effective Water Sanitation and Hygiene Services, or EWASH, is expected to address the challenge of potable water supply in Imo State.
Getting access to good water provided by the government has been a major challenge for Imo residents in the last 8 years. The different water schemes provided by the government before now are in terrible conditions, with many residents buying water or traveling long distances to get water, while those who can afford it sink private boreholes. Residents are not happy with this trend.
I thought here in Imo State, I thought there is nothing like water board, because coming to rural area or some local government, for the past 5 years, we haven't heard of anything like water board.
There used to be Okigwe Regional Water Scheme, same follow, and then the Owerri Urban Water Scheme. But of recent, these water schemes have all packed up.
In response to this challenge, the Imo State government has sealed a deal with development partners like the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, to provide a new water policy to be known as Effective Water Sanitation and Hygiene Services, or EWASH.
With this water policy that is being driven by the EWASH global policy, as it affects some states currently in Nigeria, is going a long way to ensure steady water supply, hygiene, and all that has to do with water.
We have a policy that will drive the development in the wash sector. Because without a policy, that is why we have scattered development in that sector in Imo State. You go to some towns, they have 3 water projects. You go to some, they don't have any.
The new water policy will regulate the drilling of boreholes by private individuals, ensure proper water hygiene, and achieve the World Health Organization's strategy to contain antimicrobial resistance.
In line with the global WHO strategy of how to manage antimicrobial resistance, one of the pillars is on IPC, which is infection prevention and control. So having an appropriate wash policy in the state means that you're going to align with what is happening globally, means that the state is preventing under 5 mortality, protecting the vulnerable, and is going to work in strategy with aligning with what the global best practice is. So this is a groundbreaking event, and it's really important that the stakeholders that are involved collaborate and work together in order for this policy to be implemented.
After all is signed and sealed, the government says the implementation of this policy will be the next line of action, as it hopes to put an end to the challenge of water supply in Imo State.
The CBN wants to reduce banks' exposure to risk. Kayode will be telling us how they intend to do that on Business News.
Well, that's right, Melinda, and you're welcome to Business News. The central bank has set lending limits for banks and other financial institutions under its regulation to reduce their exposure to risks. Now, according to its latest guidelines, the maximum loan by microfinance banks to any individual borrower shall not exceed 1%, while a loan to a group of borrowers shall not exceed 5% of the MFB's shareholders' fund, not weakened by losses. Similarly, the new regulation also directs that the total outstanding exposure by a DMB to any single person or a group of related borrowers must not at any point in time exceed 20% of the bank's shareholders' fund unimpaired by losses. The CBN further specifies that total outstanding exposure by a bank to all tiers of government and their agencies must not exceed 10% of the total credit portfolio. And a coalition of multilateral institutions is advocating inclusive business across the public and private sectors in order to facilitate the realization of the Sustainable Development Goals. Delegates from the Inclusive Business Action Network, as well as representatives of African Venture Philanthropy Alliance, amplified this message at a roundtable with some top executives in Lagos.
Inclusive business for us is the private sector approach that really is the contribution to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. And they can have a tremendous impact on the sustainable and economic growth here also in Nigeria. And now the good news is it's not rocket science, it's not something new. I mean, we have done that already, but the approach maybe is a little bit different.
Many times, those of us in private sector, we fold our hands and think that the responsibility of public service is governments alone. We couldn't be further from the truth. And I believe that it's a unique opportunity that we have people who have been in the private sector, who are now in government and understand it. It is for you, the challenge is for those of us who are outside of the private public sector to recognize it, identify those champions, and work with them.
And now to the NSE. The stock market got some reprieve from the sell pressure which dominated transactions in the last 2 weeks, as bargain hunting in 3 sessions lifted key indices of the NSE. The all-share index ended the third trading week of August higher by 3.0%, while the market's total value surged by 3.25% on price recovery by high-value equities. All major counters of the NSE ended positive except the insurance sector, which fell by 1.38% on profit taken in its key components. Ecobank Transnational leads 39 other gainers with a 33.33% increase. Okomu Oil tops a list of 24 losers, while Sovereign Trust, Transcorp and Zenith Bank are major contributors to a total of 2.33 billion shares traded this week. And that's Business News for tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Kayode Okikolu. The News at 10 continues with Melinda.
Many thanks, Kayode. Still ahead on the News at 10. Patrick Van Aanholt strikes late as Crystal Palace stunned Manchester United at